Leaders' questions. Call on Deputy Kelleher.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Minister, this morning we should be discussing the mortgage interest rate increase by AIB or the Exchequer returns, but instead we find the sorry, grubby affair of primary care centre selection back dominating the headlines again. Now, Minister, I've been trying to get clarity on this issue for some time. Minister Riley said and came into this House and stated that he consulted with his cabinet colleagues, he consulted with officials, and that he changed the criteria and the selection process to ensure a broader selection of primary care centres. 2 of those centres were in his own constituency. And we now find this morning a revelation that there was close political ties between one of the owners of the site and Minister Riley. Now, Minister, let's be quite clear. What we want to do is just get to the fact and the bottom of this matter. And I have a couple of questions to you, because Minister Riley is evading answering these questions. And we are very concerned about the fact that health needs are decided on a whim of a minister, based on political ties rather than on need. And Minister, let's be quite clear. This is not Billy Keller saying it. A former colleague of you, party, Roisin Shortall, resigned and stated in resignation that it was because of stroke politics that she had to throw in the towel. Now that quite clearly indicates, Minister, that there is difficulties in how primary care sites were selected, and the close political ties between the owner and the minister is an issue of concern, because the decision the minister made confers commercial and financial advantage on individuals, and that in itself is a very serious issue.
Thank you.
Now, Minister, I have 3 questions for you.
Thank you.
Were you consulted? Were you consulted about the changed criteria of the primary care site selection process? Were you aware of the political ties between Minister Riley and the landowner of the Balbriggan site? And are you personally comfortable with the decision process and the fallout from the same?
Thank you. The Minister.
Thank you. I have to say to you, Deputy Kelleher, that as the Fianna Fáil spokesperson on health, you're well aware of the background to all of this. You've asked numerous questions. I understand you had questions with Dr. Riley last week, if I'm not mistaken. And if you're unable to put down a question and pursue it to get the correct and detailed answer from the Minister directly involved, then that's more a reflection on you, sir, than it is. It is more a reflection on you. Sorry,
would you mind, please? Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you. Sorry, would you mind listen to the reply? Thank you.
You will never get the opportunity to go
you have asked.
Sorry, would you please allow the Minister to reply without interruption? Thank you.
You've already.
Would you stay quiet, please? Thank you.
I am quite satisfied on the information that I've received from Dr. Riley that the location of the site in Balbriggan is in accordance with criteria of selection that the story in today's Irish Independent is one that he has dealt with, that is dealt with satisfactorily as far as I'm concerned. And if you have detailed questions, and you clearly have, and you failed so far to get a satisfactory answer from your point of view, I suggest that you put them directly to Dr. Riley.
Deputy Kelleher.
Minister, with all due respect, this House deserves a better reply than that. I mean, that was a glib trite answer, being quite truthful. This is a very serious issue. A Minister of State in your party resigned and described it as stroke politics. And for you to glibly pass it away and cast aspersions on my ability to ask questions clearly is not good enough. I've put down the questions, but I haven't got the answers. And I'm asking you, as head of government, sitting opposite me today, to come forward and state, are you comfortable with the fact that your former party colleague resigned not only as Minister, but as Minister of Labour because she failed to get support from her party colleagues in trying to get to the bottom of this issue. And Minister Riley has conferred financial and commercial gain on individuals that he has political ties with. Posters inside in the House.
Thank you.
Putting Christmas crackers out with each other at Chamber of Commerce dinners. And you glibly say that it's not an issue. Well, Minister, you have come into this chamber You have come into this chamber before looking for heads on a lot lesser issues. On lot lesser issues.
Thank you,
At
Deputy.
least you should hold the Minister to account and not blame me.
I'd like to give notice to the House that I had requests for private notice questions on this matter, and I've granted them, so to be dealt with later. Minister.
Deputy Kelleher has attempted to use the protection of this House to suggest that there was some financial impropriety in conferring a financial advantage on a political supporter. Can I tell you, Deputy Kelleher, that the site in question was selected by Deputy Mary Harney when she was Minister for Health.
I now call on Deputy Jerry Adams. Thank you. Could we hear Deputy Jerry Adams, please? Thank you. Can we hear Deputy Jerry Adams? Thank you. Sorry, please. Sorry, would you allow the Deputy to ask his question, please? Thank you, without interruption. Thank you, Deputy Adams.
I'm looking this morning for you to explain precisely what Labour's role is in this government. And I'm looking for you to measure your record thus far against your election promises that you would stop the worst extremes of Fine Gael. And Minister, the Labour leadership's silence on the Minister's explanation for the two primary health centres in his constituency, while you sacrifice one of your own ministers, is in marked contrast to your attitude when you were in opposition. Then you railed against cronyism and the golden circles and the failed social and economic policies of Fianna Fáil. Now, Anish, Tashifig, when you saw it as na policy ha, well, Jira Kosovo less na policy ha, a big Fianna Fáil, agus Tashifig, you saw it as to Sicily, Salak, Kerna. So this morning we have revelations, and I make no judgment on this, that a supporter of Mr. Reilly owns the site on which the primary care centre in Balbriggan is to be built. And thus far the Health Minister has failed to set out in detail the criteria for the selection of locations for primary care centres. The Sinn Féin health spokesperson, Caoimhín O'Quillan, formally requested a review by the Concordia of the unsatisfactory reply he received from the Minister to a PQ from him on these matters. So, Minister, do you believe that these issues need to be clarified? Do you accept the need for transparency? Will you call on Minister Reilly to make a comprehensive statement to the Dáil later today when he takes the private member's question tabled by Teachta Ó Cuileáin? And will you also ensure that he will release all documentation on this matter for full public scrutiny? And if he fails to do this, will the Labour leadership demand that he resign his position?
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Which question would you like me to answer? I'll be guided by the Chair. I have no doubt, Deputy Adams, that Minister Reilly will, when he comes in for the special notice question on primary care, as you referred to today, will deal with all of the questions around that particular issue, as he has already done so on a number of occasions. The fact that deputies opposite may not be satisfied with the quality of the reply or with the amount of the reply is a matter for you to pursue. But you've asked me the question, am I satisfied that Minister Reilly will deal comprehensively with these issues this afternoon? My answer is yes.
I also asked you, Minister Concordia, to explain precisely what Labour's role is in this government. I'll give away if you want to, you want to answer.
The Minister can reply.
Michael, you're going to get Concordia. So you're defending a minister who's completely failed to tackle the big issues in health. In fact, he has actually compounded the problems. He's brought his own ideological and other baggage into this department. He's up to his neck in the private health sector business. He's failed to tackle consultants' pay. He's failed to tackle the price of drugs. He's imposed prescription charges on medical card holders. He's sliced funding from home health services. So we're Labour. Labour must wait. Is this what it's all about? So could you explain And this is not a question for Dr. Wright, it's a question for you, Minister. Could you explain, can I have order, let it have?
Yeah, but please, would you please allow the deputy ask this question? No, just a bit of silence for 2 minutes, thank you.
Could you explain what Labour's role is in this government, and particularly against your record while in opposition, when you railed against this type of practice, quite rightly in my opinion, but now you're silent on it. So explain to me, Ledahow.
Thank you. Minister, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Adams, if I were you, I would hesitate to refer to baggage and other deputies in this House coming into it. I would hesitate to refer to baggage. I am answering the question. I'm answering the question.
Sorry, would you please allow the Minister to respond? Thank you.
The Labour Party and Fine Gael together are attempting to rebuild the sovereign independence of this republic following the disaster that we inherited from the party opposite. It will not be done overnight. The last time we were in government, we handed over a vibrant economy with a planned surplus, and within 12 years, you drove it into the ground. We never got any economic help or support from Sinn Féin. And we will continue with the mandate that we have to repair the extraordinary damage that was done to this country. We lost over 250,000 jobs between 2007 and 2009. We are moving slowly but surely and with great difficulty to undo the damage that was done in the past. And I'm quite sure that all of the Labour Party elected members in this House and elsewhere will ensure that we will meet those targets when we have to account for our service at the end of our mandate.
Deputy Boyd-Barrett.
Thanks, Count Corley. Minister, do you realise how much fear and anger there is in the country at this moment? Fear in the hearts of ordinary people that they are going to be pushed over the edge into poverty with cuts in child benefit, the imposition of property taxes, water charges and more hikes in mortgage interest this week. And anger that this should happen at the same time that €1 billion is handed over to unsecured bondholders in Allied Irish Bank, and anger that at the same time the Minister for Health tears up the criteria for locating primary care centres that prioritised areas of deprivation and instead bumped up locations in his own constituency to the benefit of a Fine Gael supporter, Mr Murphy, who owns the land on which that centre is to be located, and to the benefit
names in the chamber. Thank you.
To the benefit of another Fine Gael supporter who gave a political donation to Minister Crichton. Isn't this reminiscent of the Fianna Fáil sleaze that you would have denounced so quickly a few years ago? Doesn't the picture of Minister Riley with Mr Murphy
Sorry, would you please
of the
put
pictures
down these pictures?
of Brian
Not allowed in the
Cowan
chamber.
with Shawnee Fitzpatrick? Isn't this the sleaze that we thought was going to be left behind? Has come back again and come back again with a vengeance. Isn't it proof, Minister, that yet again, as with the last government, we have a government of the rich, by the rich, for the rich, while ordinary people are being slaughtered with cuts and austerity? What, Minister, is the Labour Party doing propping up a government like this?
Minister.
First of all, Deputy, you talk about the fear and the worry that people have across this country. And I understand what you're saying. And we have a right to be fearful because of the state in which this country found itself over 18 months ago. Let me answer. You constantly rail about, you personally constantly rail against the adjustments, the corrections and the additional costs that are being imposed on this country by the Troika. Because yes, we did lose our economic sovereignty. We have borrowed so far this year, €11 billion. 11 billion for the first 9 months of this year. And there's probably going to be another €4.5 billion. There is nobody else in the world who will lend us money at rates that we can afford. There is simply nobody else out there that will lend us that money. And we are trying slowly, painfully, but surely to crawl our way back. And yes, it is hurtful. But do you know what's even more hurtful, Deputy? That people like you and your colleagues incite resistance, confuse facts with fiction, attempt to say that there is a need. I don't need any help, Matty. I don't need any help.
Sorry, would you mind, please, allowing somebody to respond? Thank you.
Attempting to say that there is another way, that the cuts can be avoided, that we don't have to repay the billion. The terms of the deal that we have with the only company group in town that will lend us the money is that we cannot burn the bondholders. That's the reality.
Deputy Boyd Barrett.
Cost you nothing to stop.
Would you mind, please? Would you mind?
It's free to stop cronyism.
Deputy Higgins.
That is an outrageous statement to make.
Would you please,
Minister,
please respond? Thank you. 1 minute. Thank you.
Minister, it's not just us who are inciting protests. This week in the Irish Times, Paul Krugman, the well-known economist and respected economist, said the protesters in Greece, in Spain and elsewhere in Europe who were resisting austerity, the austerity that he called cruel austerity, were absolutely right, and that the Troika were wrong, that the policies were unfair, they were cruel, and they were crippling the European economy and economies like ours that they were being imposed on. But even setting that issue
Could I have
aside,
your question, please? Thank you.
don't you think people have the right to expect that we don't have this followed by this? Don't they have the right?
You won't be finishing your question here. You'll be outside the door if you do that again.
Don't they have the right to expect, at least when cruel austerity is being imposed, cuts in home health, property charges, water charges, mortgage interest hikes, that a golden circle is not being protected and looked after with what a former minister has called stroke politics? Don't the people at least have the right to expect that stroke politics would be ended and that the golden circle would be broken up, so that it isn't just the poor and the work?
You're over time. Thank you.
The recession.
Minister, thank you.
Deputy Boyd Barrett, you and I share some things in common. We come from the same spectrum of the ideological politics of this country. And you, from your knowledge of history, will recall that even Leon Trotsky agreed with Lenin when they went into government that a new economic policy was necessary to overcome the crisis before they could get on the path of righteousness. That's where we are. That's where we are. That's why we're doing it.
I complete speaker.